streaming now. And if anyone, feel free to jump in and interrupt me. But FYI, it will be presumably recorded. So, yeah. So this is me giving an update on the state of the Skelly on August 9th, 2024, as part of the FreeMoCap Foundation monthly meeting check-in thing. And so I guess the main things going on now are that I'm working on this grant, an NSF Pose Award. It should be through the FreeMoCap Foundation. There is a GitHub repository for it at github/FreeMoCap/2024 NSF Pose. And it's a big grant. It would be like the first like big federal grant that we applied for, and it's a lot of work to get it in. But if we get it, it's like $1.5 million over the course of 2 to 3 years. So that's enough to like pay some salaries and have like, community support and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking in this meeting. We've talked a little bit about the, like the planning around this and like the task lists and whatnot. And we'll continue to do so. A lot of the project, so the repo is here, and it has, like notes and proposal component and documents and whatnot. And most of the work is happening. Like you just follow the links there. And then we've got this project board here, which sort of has a bunch of tasks on it. And this is the kind of structure I want to start using to do foundation level task planning too, which we can get to. But yeah, so this is due September 7th or September 5th. And there's a lot of parts to it that are beyond just like writing the grant, because you have to do we have to like register the organization in the research.gov, sam.gov, which I've been doing, but there's some question marks there. So we're going to try to get this in. But even if we don't, just the work of putting together the proposal has been very productive so far, because it's a lot of like the pose is like pathways for open source ecosystems. So it's to support the development of FreeMoCap into a stable, self-sustaining ecosystem. So it's like listing out the work in the proposal is like, oh, this is actually a very useful exercise in writing down the stuff that we need to do from here. Hopefully we can get it in. If we can't get it in, the next target is this Brain Barbecues grant, which is due in January. And this one, so it's NIH, it's the Brain Initiative, and it's brain behavior quantification and synchronization. And that would be a much more like core FreeMoCap, like laser skeleton development type of stuff. So hopefully we can get the pose in. If we can't, then we can push to next year for that one, and then just sort of like roll everything over onto this one, and then still just use the work that was done to lay out the plans for the proposal, as we can. And the other thing to report is that we have started sort of having these architecture meetings, like architecture chats on Wednesdays. That's starting to make plans for what we've been calling like the 2.0 version of FreeMoCap, which will build on the existing model, sort of clean up a lot of the, like update and upgrade and clean everything up. And a lot of it, I realize, is kind of like starting to clean out structures that we already had kind of worked through, largely around like this image here is related to the like the sub Skelly repos and our general sort of poly repo format, in this sort of pithy idea of like I wrote it in the grant, and I think I might hate it, but it's also might be right, like a fractal structure of a poly repo where each individual, like the core software has the same structure as the component softwares, so that there's this sort of hypothetical like every one of these repos has the same general structure and testing framework and docs framework and stuff like that. So that, which would allow for a lot of cleaning up of like both the development workflows, and also just like each of the sub Skellys can then be kind of like have the opportunity to be a standalone as well as thing, and then have like a coherent like plugin structure for communities to the community to add new stuff and blah blah blah. So that's an exciting sort of thing, and it will eventually lead to like real-time processing and like more generic pipelines and the kind of like highly configurable pipeline approach that we've been talking about forever. And it just had kind of like it's been it wasn't really possible. I think it's not really possible within the 1.0 software framework just because of the mistakes made early on. So starting this plan towards 2.0 architecture is exciting because it's the opportunity to really, I think, upgrade a lot of our core functionality. And yeah, I think that's mostly it there. We've been doing sort of, work with Ben, the client, has been going well. And I guess there's not too much to report here, but in the process of writing this proposal, I've been writing a lot of plans related to like community development and like this ideas around like community challenges where we sort of have people encourage the community to like work on recording data and like creating animations from base data sets. I talked with Aaron yesterday about there's this concept that emerged around like sort of like case studies or like vignettes or sort of like basically like little mini studies that we can think about and that are sort of not at the scale of like let's get like 10-12 subjects and do a full-on study, but it is to the scale of like, oh, we got this really cool recording of someone standing on a slack line, let's here's a good like 10 to 30 second clip of an interesting behavior, let's come up with like a miniature report on like what's going on here, which has the advantage of being like nicely student focused and also sets us up for like, it's like, oh, here's a little case study. If you wanted to do a full study off of this, you could. But it's like a way for us to finally come up with like an endpoint to all of these collections of like single shot interesting recordings that we have. So there's a whole pipeline that needs to be planned out around that, which it honestly probably is going to want to be written up in the context of this grant. But some kind of a pipeline from like interesting recording to processing to interesting analyses to visualizations to some kind of a write-up that gets posted somewhere on some website and some kind of like a blog-ish type of gallery format. And we'll, I think that will have like setting that up, I think will provide a lot of nice opportunities for people in the community and students and student-like objects to sort of like have a pathway towards like a deeper engagement with the kind of data and stuff that we can produce that will, allow basically like give the community conduits from, hey, I recorded some data to like, hey, I have some kind of like an output that I've created and we